All right, so now we're getting into the killers of cameras, right?
Yeah, yes. Everyone's favorite subject is smartphones. It seems like every week almost we come across an article that talks about how Canon or Nikon or whoever are lamenting the impact that smartphones have had on the camera industry. In fact, there was an article, we wrote an article just last week about Canon. Who recently came out and said that they're going forward, they're only going to be expecting 8.2% of the camera sales from 2010 going forward. In 2010, camera sales were 121.5 million, which is an astronomical number. And going forward, they're expecting 8.2% of that. And the biggest reason is because of smartphones. And I think we can all agree that smartphones and the cameras that they use have come along in leaps and bounds over the last 11 years or so. And the reason for that is because of constant innovation. Um, Chris shared an article with me earlier on this week, which talked about even more innovation for smartphones, and it was to do with lenses. And I think we can all agree that in the lens segment, we really haven't seen a whole lot of innovation for mirrorless or DSLR cameras for quite some time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm trying to think about the last one that was really maybe the Sony
Hmm.
2414 G Master because it was so light and so small, but otherwise, not really.
Yeah, and I mean the only one I can think of really would be the Sony 12 to 24. As well, which was a great lens, just super wide, 12 millimeter to 24 millimeter, which I tested out. That was a great lens. But really, in terms of lens design and how lenses function, not much has really changed. So this new technology that's coming out from a company called Meta Lens, which is going to be going into smartphones, basically reduces the need for multiple elements in lenses. So the way your lenses work is, you have multiple elements in there. As the light enters your lens, it hits each element, and as each element does its job, your image becomes sharper, more contrasty. You lose chromatic aberration and vignetting and things like that. And that's why you have multiple elements in lenses, and that hasn't changed from a design standpoint in a very long time. Now, this new technology is going to enable smartphone cameras, which I think you have the iPhone 12, correct, Chris?
I have the 12 Pro
The
Max,
12.
yeah.
Yep. So those lenses in that camera already have seven elements, and this new company is saying that they can now use a single lens element to reduce all of the chromatic aberration and vignetting and all the distortions in a phone camera with a single lens. And it's that kind of innovation which is really pushing smartphones to the forefront for me.
Completely. I've talked about something similar with the manufacturers before, and they're like, well, the reason why we don't do that is because otherwise you're using a whole lot of glass and it becomes incredibly heavy.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you look at the lens design, there's like a really big lens here, and then a smaller one here, and then like a spherical lens here, and then ED lenses here, and then like another big one here, and then a smaller one here, and then like this is a focusing group. um,
Right.
so that usually is the reason why it's easier for well, they need to do that for like proper cameras, traditional cameras. But with phones, everything's basically going to be in focus anyway, and they can basically just take that cluster and make it really small and then
Hmm.
turn on the camera unit.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's that level of innovation which for me has made smartphones just so prominent. And the reason why consumers won't go out and buy point and shoots, or even enthusiasts have stopped going out and buying cameras like the Rebels or the Nikon D5600s, is because smartphones are just good enough for almost everyone now. Um,
Hmm.
and camera companies keep on going back to 2010, and the reason for that is because that's the year the iPhone 4 came out, and it was the very first time that people could give up their flip phone and their walk around point and shoot as well. And so really when they talk about the market disintegrating, that's the biggest part of the loss in camera sales is the point and shoots. But I think we're now reaching the point even that it is starting to affect the higher end, and we're starting to see camera prices creeping up, so camera manufacturers can uh, mitigate that loss on their sales from entry level cameras.
I also think that, I've talked about this many times before. Watches, and one of the
Hmm.
reasons why I wear two watches is to remind me of what happened in the industry. 9/11 killed watches for our generation because I was wearing one, and then suddenly, like the next week when we went back to school, our parents gave us all cell phones because we were all freaking out. I think that happened
Hmm.
all across the nation. Um, so we didn't need watches anymore. And the watch industry started going down and down, and they started becoming luxury and like cult classic items.
Hmm.
So cameras, we've talked about this many times before, they need to
Yeah.
become that again. And I do like the idea that they are becoming more expensive because it means that the industry is a little bit more sustainable. But I also hope that it means that camera manufacturers will now actually try to do things that your phone can't. And it seems like that's happening. I mean, Canon with 8K video, Sony with 8K video. Samsung likes to say, "Oh yeah, we have a 100 something megapixel sensor with this phone," and I'm like, "No, you don't. You're just putting a whole bunch of sensors together, or you're upsampling the way that a Foveon sensor does."
Hmm.
Um, so I think that cameras need to become one a luxury market, like we've talked about before, but also professional market.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it becoming more expensive because I agree, like the lower end stuff, people
Hmm.
don't really care about that stuff. But it also does mean that the point and shoots and fixed lens cameras are becoming better. Like, look at the X100V.
Do you think that going forward, there's really going to be enough of a market for point and shoots like the X100V or the GR3 from Ricoh, say, to stick around, given how good smartphone cameras are now? And I ask that because, I recently went out and bought that Pentax Q7, right? I wanted just a little camera to take around and me to shoot and it'd be fun. And I still find myself just whipping out my iPhone to take pictures when I'm out and about instead of even taking that small camera around with me.
Your iPhone, let's be honest, is also socially connected. You do
Hmm.
share a lot of things immediately to Facebook.
Yep.
Um, I think the cameras need to do something that will tempt someone to want to use them while not even being connected. I mean, I think film does that, let's be honest.
Hmm.
You would be okay just like shooting a film photo and like not having a problem at all and
Right.
waiting. Um Going back to more of your point, and I'm probably gonna annoy a lot of people saying this and hurt a lot of people that like Rico. Um, that GR3, in my opinion, I think they really messed it up. There's no
Hmm.
weather sealing. I do feel like they needed to improve the autofocus for like the travel stuff and like all the other stuff. And yes, you do have snap focus, and that's
Hmm.
cool. But come on, guys. Like, so many years passed, you barely did anything to it. The GR3, and I know that we recommend it in a bunch of buyer's guides. I don't think that cameras like that aren't really pushing the envelope have a place anymore. I think that cameras that will push the envelope and point and shoots that will do something different have a place for people like you and me that care about having those smaller cameras.
Hmm.
Um, just because they care that much about image quality, but also most people don't really need interchangeable lens cameras. Like, honestly, if I really wanted to for my job, I could probably use the X100V, or I could probably use like a Leica Q2,
Hmm.
or let's say the Sony RX series. I could really do a lot of my job with that. And a lot of journalists really do that. Um, I think that cameras need to evolve a lot more from what they are right now because they're not just something that's for photographers. For the professionals, like it's not just for professional photographers. They're professional content creators,
Hmm.
professional journalists. I came out from college 2009 and I was expected to be able to know how to shoot video, to write, to edit, to know how to work on all these other platforms, to know how to shoot video and edit video and all that kind of stuff, and I still do know how to do that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and I can only imagine what it's like for kids these days, or young adults rather these days, to come out of college and have to be able to do all those things. Like they're probably being told, yeah, do it with your phone, but then later on you see a need for having like a higher end camera like what I'm being shot on right now.
Hmm.
Um yeah, that's how I'm feeling, but also like I do think that a hobbyist, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that we're all passionate photographers. There is a place for a hobbyist person that just geeks out about cameras, the same way that people geek out about watches or they geek out about cars. Like, just imagine the guy who buys his Corolla and puts like rims on it and like, the spoiler and the other kits and all that stuff. Like, those people exist. And there's nothing wrong with that. There always will be a market for that. But I feel that the market needs to sort itself out and we need to stop using the same components and we need to give people a reason to really want to buy cameras.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And in fact, that's what Michael just said in the comments. He says the camera companies need to make need to make photography with a camera cool again. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with that. We have guitar heroes, but not camera heroes. Big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I completely agree. There's when you look at marketing from Canyon manufacturers, there's nothing that screams use this for fun. Use cool. Go out, have fun with it. You know what I mean? Unlike, you see smartphone commercials now and using the cameras on those, they make it seem like so much fun. I think that needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a while. I mean, in some ways, I do feel the manufacturers were trying to do that, but they were a little too ahead of their of the game at that
Hmm.
point. Like maybe they were trying to do it 2014. Like Pentax, I feel. Pentax used to have more cameras in every color under the rainbow and
Oh
it was
gosh.
awesome.
Yep, I remember.
It was so awesome. But I feel like it just wasn't really appreciated because they weren't really innovating on the inside and that was still a time where we really cared about like cameras as like a professional tool, but
Hmm.
the market has evolved. Like, like you have your film cameras that you use just for fun, you have your
Yep.
Q that you use just for fun. um I have a couple cameras that I use just for fun, like I'm spending more and more time with the Panasonic S5 just because I'm handling like all of the L mount stuff right now,
Hmm.
and I see just how fun that camera can be. And I would buy the thing. It's just like at the same time, it's a slower focusing Sony with the same sensor and better ergonomics and a few other cool features like multiple exposure and live composite and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And I feel like these camera companies need to find ways to just do something different. Like if the Panasonic S5 had the same sensor from like the Leica M's, I probably would have bought it easily. Um because it's got everything else I want in it. And I mean, I was thinking about this earlier on, like the EOS R, that's what I still have. Fantastic camera, but I really wish that it had a joystick, and I really wish that in 4K video it didn't try to crop down to like this part of my face.
Hmm.
Um, with a 50 millimeter lens, and the R5 pretty much has almost everything that I would want in it. Um, but I have to really think about that a little bit more because the market also opened up a lot more. Like, I don't really think I would want the Sony A1. I may want the GFX 100S though.
Hmm.
The problem with that is all their lenses are ginormous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
big old
and
bulky system.
yeah, and I don't really think there's a whole lot of lens innovation there either. Um, so I mean, you can't win them all. But there are problems overall, and these problems are things that we still talk about, and they shouldn't be problems anymore
Hmm.
in order for these companies to survive. Like, honestly, poor Nikon, man.
I know. I know they're having it rough. In fact, I just read just this last week they're shutting down two more factories, two lens factories. In fact, they're shutting down.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a tough time. Man,
It is really depressing, but also I'm looking over at my iPhone right now, and like the thing is that is such a great tool for a journalist as well too,
mhm,
because I can use it with a lav mic hooked up, and everything will sound great.
yep,
And I can bring that audio into Final Cut, which I edit in, and I can sync it up with the video, and it'll sound fantastic. I won't really have a
yeah,
problem with it at all. Cameras, you can do that as well too, but it's just so much easier for me to do it with my iPhone. And then my iPhone also, again, like I have the shoot and share capability built right in.
yep,
Samsung had that with the Galaxy NX. It's just I don't really feel like they stuck with it. It felt a little bit it felt a lot like a camera, don't get me
mhm,
wrong. I think that if they really want to get that consumer market back, I think it would make sense to create a camera that's a phone, maybe with interchangeable lenses. I don't know. I don't know
yeah.
how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Because part of what makes phone photography so much fun is it's so easy to use, as you say. Pick it up, open an app, boom, picture's taken. You don't have to worry about lenses. You don't have to worry about anything else. It's just there and readily available, and you can capture an image in a split second. Um, and I know many consumers probably won't go out and buy a dedicated camera again, but I'm also seeing professionals use just iPhones or Galaxies or whatever now as well for their images. We've interviewed a couple of them, and the images they can produce with these smartphones now are just simply phenomenal. So it's a tough one, just because smartphone cameras are have come along in such a massive way that even people who make a living from this feel like they can use them now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. It's so much so to the point that every now and again I toy around with, making the site evolve even more to be
Hmm.
like, when I started my internship years ago at PC Magazine, it was like, yeah, we don't only review PCs. Basically, if it has a chip in it, we review it. And I'm
Right.
thinking like, if we were to get to a point, the site where basically if it has a camera in it, we would review it, there would be so many devices that we should be
Oh wow.
reviewing.
Yeah.
It would be insane. Um, but like I can't really sit here and think about the fact that like well, I can because we're literally talking about it right now. That these traditional camera manufacturers are really sitting here and just like focusing on like what a camera was, what it can be, but not embracing what it can be to the fullest. Like
Yep.
cameras can be so useful for so many things in life. Like this A7R3, I could probably set it up to be like a security cam if I wanted
Hmm.
at night. Or a webcam, I could do the same thing. And you can use it for like face recognition for a bunch of things. Like um I'm just thinking about all the things that you can use a camera for, and there's so many. So many possibilities. Like there's 3D scanning, there's
Hmm.
I was gonna say
Distance measuring.
LiDAR. Pardon?
Yeah, lidar. Yeah, lidar. Distance measuring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um Eventually it's probably going to get to the point where in 10 years when the internet becomes even better that you can use it for holographic technology.
Hmm.
um God, there's so much
Yeah.
that these camera companies could do if they just open up their platforms a little bit more, but they're not, and they're not really encouraging app developers as much. I'm looking at you, Sony.
Hmm.
um Olympus did so, but I don't know how successful that was, and now they're OM Digital Solutions anyway, so
Right. I
yeah.
do think if there is one company that could really start bringing people back from just using their smartphones, it would be Olympus. Um, I feel like their cameras are fun to use. They have some unique features like Live Comp, which we talk about. How often or how many times have you seen Olympus actively push Live Comp in any of their adverts or their brochures or anything like that? I can think of zero times.
Rarely.
Yeah, and it's one of
Very
the most
rarely.
amazing features, and yet people who would be drawn to that, photographers without, say, a ton of experience in long exposures or astrophotography or anything like that, would be drawn to that because it will help them create those images. And yet they're not selling those features that could bring people back.
I agree with you. I also think that they're not selling the fact that they create such great JPEGs with their art filters and their
Hmm.
guides, like their grainy black and white stuff on the Pen F was fantastic.
Yep.
And I think they have something similar to like an instant film filter, and then I have another one that's like pop art. I was gonna say Warhol, but I stopped myself. So there's so much that like they just don't push about their own identity, and I don't understand why, because they're really just pushing into like the birding market and
Right.
the landscape market. But it's like, yeah, but your cameras can actually be fun. Why don't you push that aspect?
Exactly. And that's what's going to bring people back. It's the fun aspect of it, the fun element. Um, that's what makes phones so cool. They're fun to use. They're easy to use. And that's what needs to come back to the photography industry. I understand it going more professional as well. I completely get that.
Hmm.
But I would love to see more young people coming and pick up a dedicated camera that they can have fun with and learn with before they move up to that higher end market rather than just use their cell phone.
Yeah. Also, I don't think that we should really sit there and lean very hard into super clinical perfect looks, because
Hmm.
there is the whole trend where like people are buying old digital cameras like original pen EP1 and like
Yep.
5D Mark II, and they're just embracing like the flaws that they can get from that gear. Um yeah, I that's the other thing. I feel like we're being too clinical at times.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's cool in terms of technology, but I don't feel like we need to completely uh I'm trying to find the right word. Make it surgically clear and crisp.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I
Completely
don't want to
agree.
say clinical again because I said it so many times.
How about sterile?
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. And
Sterile images from these lenses.
yeah. Um and I like the fact that Tamron was doing that, and as I was talking about
Hmm.
earlier on. Let's take a look. Camera companies need to make photography. You read that already by Mike. All my cameras are just for fun. Well, yes, that makes sense, Christine.
Good.
More comments. John is saying, oh wow, there's a fair amount of comments on Facebook. Let me see. Come on, Bookface, refresh. One problem I see with phones is printing. Even the high resolution phones produce really gross enlargements over 11 by 14. You guys see similar results? Um, and he's apologizing for dominating the comments. You should not apologize. Yes, we do see similar results. Printing, I don't want to say it's a dying industry. I just can't even wrap my head around it. And in some ways, I feel like printer manufacturers sort of shoot themselves in the foot.
Hmm.
Like Canon with their recent printer that came out last year. Like they came out with a printer, they don't put Bluetooth in it. Like they're targeting it at pros. Like, come on, guys. Also, they don't really change the interface to like modernize it at all. Like printers still feel like they're still caught in the 90s in some ways.
Yep.
I'd really love to see some innovation in Micro Four Thirds too, something to replace that Panasonic GM1. I think it was tiny but with a bigger sensor. NILC capability would be sweet. I agree with you, man.
Hmm.
I agree with you. I'm just not sure that that system is ready for something like 36 megapixels like they're talking about, though.
Didn't the GM1 come out at the same time as the Pentax Q, roughly? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
That was a beautiful camera. I love that thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd really like an RX 107, but man, pricey. I agree with you. That camera is not worth the money.
No.
The new RF lenses come to mind. The long f11s are neat, and the 2870 f2, but nothing super new or crazy. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Fujifilm, they do have that 50 f1. That's the first
Hmm.
autofocus one out there. Let's go down the line. So Canon, they have 15 to 35 f2.8 with image stabilization.
Yep.
but Sony sort of beat that out with 12 to 24.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their 7200 is very small
Yep.
for Canon. I'll give them that. They have 51.2. They have an 85.1.2 with autofocus. Nikon has a 51.2 now. Okay, so that's Canon. Canon, Sony, we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Fujifilm, they have 51.2 autofocus. That's mostly about it. Uh, Panasonic, nothing. As far,
No.
well, Micro Four Thirds, they do. They have that. Is it a 10 to 17? I'm trying to remember.
It's the 10 to 25. Yeah,
The
10 to
1.7,
25.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. They have that. Sigma's got some innovation as well too. I will give them that. They have the 18 to 35 f1.8.
Mm-hmm.
They have the only 35 1.2 on the market with autofocus. Leica, the M line of it just always felt was innovative because they're just so small.
Mm-hmm.
That's really about it. Um, Nikon, I don't really feel like they're innovating in lenses.
No, nice lenses, but I mean, they're just like their cameras. They're nice lenses.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
I said Panasonic, Olympus. Olympus does have some innovative glass.
Yeah, they do. The new, was it the 150 to 400 or 100 to 450 is pretty innovative with the two built-in teleconverters. That's interesting. It's also very expensive, but it's an interesting lens.
Yeah. Um, Pentax. For the past couple years, they've mostly just been rebranding Tamron lenses,
Yep,
haven't they?
just Tamron lenses
Okay.
and sticking the price tag even higher.
Yeah, exactly. Tamron is actually innovating. I'll give him that.
Yep.
I think that when their new program started, like they needed some revamps, but I think that they've got the ball rolling and they're
Yeah.
actually very good. I was thinking about buying a couple, but I don't know how much more I really want to buy for the Sony E mounts until I get a camera that I actually want from them.
Hmm. Makes
So
sense.
yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing right now too. Like usually like I will upgrade one system every year, but last year obviously like we weren't doing any of that.
Hmm.
And this year I'm just like, I could probably get a second Canon body. Last 2 years ago I bought the X Pro 3, or actually no, I got it in the mail actually like in January 2020. Um but if I buy Canon, I'd probably want to get another lens with it, and in that case, I'd want a 35 millimeter
Hmm.
L. But I haven't seen anything like that yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to see. I mean, the best time is always sometimes wait till Black Friday sales.
Hmm.
That's a long time from now. I don't know if I want to
Yeah.
do that. It really depends. I have mostly everything I need. We'll see. We'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, this is the end of the show. Thank you folks so much. Let me check Facebook one more time. It doesn't have any other camera comments. Okay.
No.
Well, thank you folks so much. We really appreciate you coming out on Super Bowl Sunday. It means a lot to us. As always, if you are here on Zoom joining us, we will cut the feed and then we'll open it up to you guys just to talk. No problems. Thank you, those of you who are following us on Facebook. It means a lot to us. We had a fair amount of viewership there tonight, so it means a lot to us. We will
Absolutely.
be here. We're not coming we're not going to have an episode on February 14th. That is Valentine's Day. I'm going to be selfish and also say it is the day right before my birthday where I turned 34. Um, so yeah, but we'll be back the week after. So we will see you in 2 weeks then. All right.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, folks. Have a good night.